YouVersion app, Amplified Bible, Classic Edition, AMPC. Matthew 27. When it was morning, all the chief priests and the elders of the people held a consultation against Jesus to put him to death. And they bound him and led him away and handed him over to the Pilate, the governor. When Judas, his betrayer, saw that Jesus was condemned, Judas was afflicted in the mind and troubled for his former folly, and was remorse. With little more than a selfish dread of the consequences, he brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders, saying, I have sinned in betraying innocent blood. They replied, What is that to us? See to that yourself, in casting a piece of silver forward into the holy place of the sanctuary of the temple, he departed and went off and hanged himself. But the chief priest, picking up the pieces of silver, said, It is not legal to put these in the consecrated treasury, for it is the price of blood. So after the consultation, they bought with them the pieces of silver, the potter's field as a place in which to bury strangers. Therefore that piece of ground has been called the field of blood to the present day. Then were fulfilled the words spoken by Jeremiah the prophet when he said, And they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of him of whom a price had been set by some of the sons of Israel, and they gave them for the potter's field as the Lord directed me. Now Jesus stood before the governor Pilate, and the governor asked him, Are you the king of the Jews? Jesus said to him, You have stated the fact. But when the charges were made against him by the chief priests and elders, he made no answer. Then Pilate said to him, Do you not hear how many and how serious are the things they are testifying against you? But he made no reply to him, not even a single accusation, so the governor marveled greatly. Now the feast of the Passover, the governor was in the habit of setting free for the people any one prisoner whom they choose. And at that time they had a notorious prisoner whose name was Barabbas. And when they had assembled for the purpose, Pilate said to them, Who do you want me to set free for you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Christ? For he knew that it was because of envy that they had handed him over to him. Also, while he was seated in the judgment bench, his wife sent him a message saying, Having nothing to do with that just, upright man, for I have had a painful experience today in a dream because of him. But the chief priests and the elders prevailed on the people to ask Barabbas and put Jesus to death. Again the governor said to them, Which of the two do you wish me to release to you, for you? And they said, Barabbas. Pilate said to them, Then what shall I do with Jesus, who is called Christ? They replied, Let him be crucified. And he said, Why? What has he done that is evil? But they shouted all the louder, Let him be crucified. So when Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but rather that a riot was about to break out, he took water and washed his hands in the presence of the crowd, saying, I am not guilty of, nor responsible for the righteous man's blood. See to it yourselves. And all the people answered, Let his blood be on us and our children. So he set free for them Barabbas, and he had Jesus whipped and delivered up to be crucified. Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus into the palace, and they gathered the whole battalion about him. And they stripped off his clothes and put a scarlet robe, garment of dignity and office worn by Roman officers of rank, upon him. And weaving a crown of thorns, they put it on his head and put a reed staff in his right hand, and kneeling before him, they made sport of him, saying, Hail, Greetings and good health to you. Long life to you, King of the Jews. And they spat on him and took a reed staff and struck him on the head. And when they finished making sport of him, they stripped him of the robe and put his own garments on him and led him away to be crucified. As they were marching forth, they came upon a man of Cyrene named Simon. This man they forced to carry the cross of Jesus. And when they came to a place called Golgotha, Latin Calvary, which means the place of the skull, they offered him wine mingled with gall to drink. But when he tasted it, he refused to drink it. And when they had crucified him, they divided and distributed his garments among them. By casting lots, and the prophet's saying was fulfilled. They parted my garments among them, and over my apparel they cast lots. And they sat down there and kept watch over him. And over his head they put an accusation against him, the cause of his death, which read, "This is Jesus, King of the Jews." At the same time, 2 robbers were crucified with him. One was on the right hand and one was on the left hand. And those who passed by spoke reproachfully and abusively and jeered at him, wagging his head. And they said, "You who tear down the sanctuary of the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, rescue yourself from death. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross." In the same way, the chief priests and the scribes and the elders made sport of him, saying, "He rescued others from death. Himself he cannot rescue from death. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross now, and we will believe in and acknowledge and cleave to him. He trusts in God, and let God deliver him now. If he cares for him and will have him, for he said, 'I am the Son of God.'" And the robbers who were crucified with him also abused and reproached and made sport of him in the same way. Now in the 6th hour at noon there was a darkness over all the land until the 9th hour, 3 o'clock. And about 9th hour, 3 o'clock, Jesus cried in a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani." That is, my God, why have you abandoned me, leaving me helpless, forsaking and failing me in my need?" And some of the bystanders, when they heard it, said, "The man is calling for Elijah." And one of them immediately ran and took a sponge and soaked it in vinegar, a sour wine, and put it in the reed and staff, and was about to give it to him to drink. And the other said, "Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come and save him from death." And Jesus cried again in a loud voice and gave up his spirit. And at once the curtain of the sanctuary of the temple was torn in two, top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks were split. The tombs were opened, and many bodies of the saints had fallen asleep in death were raised to life. And coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many people. When the centurion and those who were with him, keeping watch over Jesus, observed the earthquake and all that was happening, they were terribly frightened and filled with awe, and said, "Truly this was the Son of God's Son." There was also numerous women who were looking on from a distance. There were of those who had accompanied Jesus from Galilee, ministering to him. Among them were Mary Magdalene, and Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's sons. When it was evening, there came a rich man and Martha named Joseph, who also was a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus, and Pilate ordered that it be given to him. And Joseph took the body and rolled it up in a clean linen cloth used of swathing dead bodies, and laid it on his own fresh, undefiled tomb, which he had hewn in rock. And he rolled the big boulder over, and the door of the tomb, and went away. And Mary Magdalene and the other Mary kept sitting there opposite the tomb. The next day, that is, the day after the day of preparation, the Sabbath, the chief priests and the Pharisees assembled before Pilate and said, Sir, we have just remembered how that vagabond impostor said while he was still alive, After 3 days I will rise again. Therefore give an order to have the tomb made secure and safeguard it until the third day, for fear that his disciples will come and steal him away, and tell the people that he has risen from the dead, and the last deception and fraud will be worse than the first. Pilate said to them, You have a guard of soldiers? Take them and go. Make it as secure as you can. So they went off and made the tomb secure by sealing the boulder, a guard of soldiers being with them and remaining to watch.